She sat by herself in the riverside park, the weight in her chest heavier than the wheelchair beneath her. The afternoon was quiet, almost painfully so, as late autumn wrapped riverside green belt in muted colors. The Gallatin River slid past with a steady, indifferent rhythm. Cottonwood trees leaned over the water, their leaves dry and brittle, skittering across the gravel paths when the wind nudged them loose. Most people had already left for the day. Cold chased away crowds, leaving the park to those who needed silence more than company. Near a narrowing bend in the trail, a young woman remained still in her wheelchair. She wore a black coat that fell past her knees, formal and unmistakably somber. The hem of a dark dress showed beneath it, the kind worn to say goodbye forever. Her light brown hair was loosely tied, strands escaping in the wind, brushing her face without notice. Her skin looked pale, drained not by fear but by exhaustion, the deep kind grief leaves behind once tears are spent. Her hands rested gently on the rims of her wheelchair, fingers unmoving. The chair itself was worn but functional, its metal frame scratched from years of use, its tires dusted with fallen leaves. She stared at the river without really seeing it, as though she were waiting for something that would never return. Since the funeral, this spot had become her refuge. Home felt too empty. Here at least, the moving water reminded her that time hadn't stopped, even if she felt frozen inside it. Farther down the path, footsteps crunched softly. Ethan Cole walked at an easy pace, leash slack in his hand. He was in his late 20s, tall, lean, and purposeful without appearing threatening. Everything about him suggested control without effort. His jacket was worn, his boots well used, his movements economical. Years of discipline lived quietly in the way he carried himself. At his side walked a German shepherd, large and alert, his coat the color of smoke and sand. The dog moved with calm awareness, ears forward, eyes attentive. There was no vest or badge, but nothing about him said pet. This was a working dog even in rest. Ethan had made this walk a routine since leaving active service. Morning or evening, the same path, the same stretch of river. It gave his days shape when everything else felt blurred. As they approached the bend, Ethan noticed the woman in the wheelchair. He'd seen her before, always alone, always still, always dressed in black. He didn't stare, but he noticed the way her posture folded inward, as if shielding herself from something unseen. Ranger noticed her too. His pace slowed slightly, ears tipping forward. Ethan felt the shift through the leash. "Easy," Ethan murmured. They passed quietly. The woman didn't look up. But as Ethan continued walking, a familiar ache settled in his chest. He recognized that stillness. He had carried it himself once. After loss, after silence replaced everything that used to matter. Ethan and Ranger turned back as the light dimmed, the air sharpening with the promise of cold. When they rounded the bend again, Ethan immediately sensed something was wrong. A man stood near the woman's wheelchair, a police officer, uniform neat, posture relaxed in a way that felt wrong. Too casual. Too confident. The officer spoke to her. Ethan couldn't hear the words, but he saw the way the man positioned himself, blocking part of the path. The woman lifted her head, listening without expression. Ranger stopped walking entirely, body going still, muscles subtly tense. His ears tracked tone instead of words. The officer gestured toward the wheelchair, palm up as if offering help. From a distance it might have looked polite. Up close it felt expectant. The woman shook her head once, firm and quiet. The officer's jaw tightened. His eyes flicked around the park, empty benches, fading light, no witnesses. Ethan stopped walking. Years of training kicked in automatically. Observe. Assess. Wait. Ranger released a low breath, not a growl, but close enough to send a warning through Ethan's nerves. The officer stepped closer. The woman's shoulders tensed, hands gripping the wheels. Ethan stayed where he was, leash firm in his hand. The officer spoke again, leaning in. Then his hand moved toward the wheelchair. Ethan felt the moment before it broke. The woman protested, her voice trembling but clear. The officer ignored it. His fingers closed around the handle. "Don't," she said. What happened next was fast and ugly. She slapped his wrist on instinct. The officer's face hardened. Anger flashed. He shoved. The wheelchair tipped, one wheel catching on a hidden root beneath the leaves. Metal scraped stone. The woman fell hard, breath ripped from her lungs as gravel tore into her shoulder. The chair clattered to the side. Ethan moved. The officer turned away, already trying to control the narrative, his hand hovering near his radio. The woman lay stunned on the ground, unable to rise. "That wasn't a fall," Ethan said quietly to himself. Ranger growled, louder now, the sound sharp enough to slice through the stillness. Ethan approached, steps steady, voice calm but carrying authority when he spoke. "Officer." The man spun around, startled. His confidence wavered when he saw the dog. "This is police business," the officer snapped. "I saw what happened," Ethan replied. "That wasn't procedure." Ethan positioned himself between the officer and the woman without touching either. Ranger stood alert at his side, a controlled threat. "Back away," Ethan said. The officer hesitated. He looked around again. Still no witnesses. Then his gaze lingered on Ranger a second too long. With a muttered curse, he stepped back, anger simmering beneath forced restraint. He left without another word, boots striking gravel harder than necessary. Ethan waited until he was gone before kneeling beside the woman. "You're safe now," he said gently. Ethan helped her sit up carefully, assessing injuries the way instinct demanded. She winced but didn't cry out. Ranger pressed close, his warmth steady against her legs. When Ethan set the wheelchair upright and guided her back into it, her composure finally shattered. She cried then, quiet at first, then uncontrollably. Not just from pain but from humiliation, fear, and the deep exhaustion of always being vulnerable. Ethan didn't rush her. He didn't offer empty reassurances. He stayed. When her breathing slowed, she looked up at him with red, swollen eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "You didn't do anything wrong." That was the beginning. Her name was Clara Wynne. She was 24, thoughtful, reserved, carrying more loss than her years should have allowed. Her brother had died suddenly in an accident, leaving behind silence where laughter used to live. The park had been their place. They began walking together most afternoons. Sometimes Ethan pushed the chair. Sometimes Clara insisted on doing it herself. Ranger always stayed close. She talked about her brother. About grief. About how people stopped seeing her once she was seated lower than the world around her. Ethan listened. He understood more than he said. One evening, as the light faded early, Clara stiffened. "He's here," she whispered. The former officer stepped out from the trees, no uniform now, rage replacing authority. He circled them, bitterness spilling from every word. He blamed Ethan. He blamed Clara. Then he lunged. Ethan reacted instantly, redirecting the wild punch, controlling distance, keeping Clara protected. Ranger barked once, sharp, decisive. The man stumbled, furious and desperate, but unskilled. Ethan took him down with controlled force, ending the fight without excess. Before the man could recover, a woman appeared at the edge of the path, phone raised. "I saw everything," she said. "And I recorded it." The officer's confidence collapsed. He fled into the trees, threats empty now. Silence returned. Clara exhaled, hands trembling but spine straight. "I'm tired of being afraid," she said. "You're not weak," Ethan replied. "You were alone. That night changed something." The consequences came quietly. Investigations began. Old complaints resurfaced. Patterns emerged. The badge no longer protected what it once hid. Clara met with advocates who listened without rushing her. Her story mattered now. She joined a support group. She learned grief didn't vanish, it transformed. Strength, she discovered, wasn't loud. Ethan found purpose too. He joined search and rescue, training dogs to find people instead of fight enemies. Ranger thrived in the new role. The park changed with the season. Leaves fell. Light sharpened. Shadows lifted. One afternoon, Clara rolled along the trail alone, stopping at the familiar bend. Ranger lay nearby in the weak sun. Ethan stood a few steps back, watching the river. "I'm okay," she said softly. Ethan nodded. Strength, after all, doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply stays.